As many of you recall, back in April, we had a TSIA webinar, TSIA Technology Services Industry Association. They held a webinar hosted by John Ragsdale, Technology Research VP of TSIA, attended by our CEO, Krishna Raj Raja, and two prominent customer support leaders, Deepak Chavla of Nutanix and Joshua Simon of Aruba HPE. The webinar was received very well. We had hundreds of people actually who've downloaded or attended the webinar live. And there were a lot of interest in terms of learning more about the practices of these two support organizations with intelligence support. So first, I want to say that the webinar recording is available on our website. And we are very glad that today we have our guest speaker, Al Harper, Senior Manager of Support Readiness at Nutanix, here with us to share his experience and practices with intelligence support and answer your questions. So welcome, Al. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your role at Nutanix.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for coming. Yeah, so my name's Al, and I started with I started with Nutanix support about 6 years ago. I actually joined as a systems reliability engineer, SRE. That's what we call the support engineers at Nutanix. I was one of the first 10 that were hired on the East Coast in the United States. Did that for a little bit and then became a support manager, managing that same group of people. Spent a brief stint as a technical account manager, and for the past couple of years, I've been on our support readiness team, managing there. And the primary things that I focus on as a support readiness manager, I own our knowledge base. So there's knowledge engineering and a lot of ins and outs that go with that. I also own our support technical training. So anything that's enabling the support engineers really to do their jobs better from knowledge and training is stuff that comes through me. In addition to owning those teams, I primarily focus on like support operational improvement and making sure that we're looking for new ways to automate things, improve the experience for engineers, for customers, just looking for anything that we can do to make things better, which is what led us to SupportLogic, and I'm the primary liaison between Nutanix and SupportLogic. I manage that piece on the inside here.
Great, Al. Actually, as we were preparing for this session, you mentioned that you, at some point earlier in your career, you worked at Apple Genius. And for those of us that remember the Apple retail store, the Genius Bar was a tech support station located inside the store. Hopefully it'll still be there after this period is over. And as a tech support genius, I think you provided concierge style support for customers of Apple products. So curious how that direct consumer experience helped shape your experience in B2B support.
Yeah. So that kind of takes me back. Yes, I was a genius at the Genius Bar working with Apple years ago, and yeah, it's one of those, like, working directly, not just directly with customers over the phone, because I did that with Nutanix and with other companies before becoming a support manager and even after. But yeah, working at the Genius Bar, you have people walk up to you basically with cold cases, right? You don't know what's going to happen until they bring their device up to you and they just kind of hand you an iPhone and say, it's broken. And it's a pretty unique experience. You really have to focus on and learn and build on customer empathy, right? Because you have them right in front of you. You can see their face, you can read their expressions, and the primary expression you get in those situations is frustration. You know, people are frustrated with the problems that they're experiencing, and you learn that in those situations, it didn't matter if it was an iPhone that was broken, an account that was locked out, a MacBook that was running slow. One thing was always in common, and that's that the customer was having a bad experience with their product, And you quickly learn that the focus of that session and working with them while you're fixing their product, of course, the focus really had to be on fixing their perception of the product and trying to correct their experience. And that's stuck with me well beyond working for Apple. Actually, part of what I did when I first joined Nutanix was I helped build our early onboarding program for support engineers, and we called it the Nutanix support experience. And it was the same idea, right? That when people are coming to us for help, they have things that are broken, but what's really broken is the relationship between Nutanix and that customer. And you're repairing the product, but you're repairing the relationship as well. And that comes from understanding where they're coming from, the frustration that they're feeling. Anytime I've had to deal with customer support with different companies where I've had a bad experience, it's because I felt like they didn't really care when I was having a problem. I may have gotten a hint that they were frustrated that I was even asking for help. And nothing makes me madder than that. Like, look, your job is to fix things. Let's work on this together. And that's something that we've really tried to build on at Nutanix. And I like to think that I played a role in helping drive that, since I do have that background that really just kind of always stuck with me. I've never been able to let go of empathy, customer empathy being kind of one of the #1 skills that you need to screen for when you're even just interviewing support engineers for potential hires.
Excellent. And you brought that customer empathy and what perhaps maybe was even easier in a face-to-face interaction with the customer in terms of what their sentiments are, where now it's through reading case notes and interactions that come in through other channels that are as direct but equally as important when it comes to sentiment and sense of urgency and so forth.
Oh yeah, it's both better and worse when you're right in front of the customer. It's better because it's easier to read, right? It's easier to pick up on how they're feeling and all that. It's worse because they can pick up on how you're feeling. You don't have that safety net to hide behind that is the mute button that every support engineer loves so much, right? You mute and then you go, oh no, I have no idea what to do. Then you unmute and say, all right, let's work on this together. You can't do that in person. So it's a unique skill to build at that point. But yeah, you're able to really, really connect with the customer when you're right in front of them. Translating that to phone, and even worse, like text, email, things like that, it's really hard to do, really, really difficult.
So let's see if you can, with SupportLogic, you can make it as easy to read as you would in an in-person person. That would be a stretch goal. But let's go to Nutanix. I know you prepared this slide. Tell us a little bit about the company for those of us who may not have the background and its rise over the last decade.
Yeah, sure. So Nutanix, I mean, as this says, we're primarily a hyper-converged infrastructure company. So we sell a number of different products from the hardware and all the different features that come along with it. I could spend a while going into that. You'd probably be glad that I didn't. I'm not a salesperson. I really am a support person through and through. So there's many different products and services that we provide. And we've really grown over the past 10 years from really strictly an appliance company. When we first started, it was primarily VDI that we serviced. That was our bread and butter, so to speak. And we've grown from appliance into software and finally subscription, where we're doing much more cloud-based. There are a lot of products that we have that reach into a lot of different areas, which is great. But one of the things that's been consistent across the 6 years that I've been here is the NPS, right? The Net Promoter Score. That's our true north. That's how we determine if we're doing the right thing when it comes to customer loyalty. I won't claim that I've been at Nutanix 6 years and we've had 90 for 6 years average, but I'll let anybody draw the conclusions that they want to. But seriously, our NPS being so high is outstanding. It's something that we've won multiple awards for it. It's been consistently high. Like we've never had, I've never been at a company that's been able to maintain something like that. And that started from day one when I came in. And the message is still the same from when I joined 6 years ago, that the customer experience and making sure that we're taking good care of our customers is a huge focus. Because of that, we've seen growth with customers. We have amazing retention and repurchase rates with our customers, and just generally speaking, the the overall experience when we talk to our customers, and it comes to support, is a great one. I mentioned before that, negative support experiences. I know everybody on the call has had at least one negative support experience with some company somewhere along the line, be it retail or enterprise, and those always stick out to you. And it's one of those research facts that it takes 5 positive experiences to overwrite 1 negative experience. And I feel like we've done an excellent job with that, making it so that the Nutanix support itself is really baked into the product. It's baked into the whole experience of using it, and calling Nutanix support it's typically not a negative experience. It's not a pain to have to call support. It's something where we try and engage and really become part of that customer journey, so to speak.
Yeah. So,
and go ahead.
The mission and key drivers that you shared, and to me what is striking is that I do recall maybe up to a decade ago, many support organizations were considered COGS, and it was all about driving more efficiency, introducing tech, and re-engineer processes for more efficiency. But now, when I read, for example, your mission statement, where support is a competitive advantage for foster customer loyalty, with some of the net revenue gain numbers that you showed, 130+%, driving revenue, and also the list of awards on the right-hand side. It's pretty remarkable that you've achieved in building a worldwide, world-class customer support organization.
Yeah, and the way that Nutanix support works internally is even special and different from what I've seen at other places. That using it as a competitive advantage, that's something that we talk to our sales teams about. A lot of places support is something that you kind of throw on after the fact to make sure it's a safety net for customers. But they use it as a selling point, and internally we have it baked into the sales organization as a whole, where they help fund Nutanix support to a certain extent as well. There's a shared agreement there that we're not just here to fix the problems, they're not just here to sell it. It's kind of a cross collaboration at that point, where we're all in the same boat of making sure that as we add new customers, we're giving them the right experience from the get-go. And so we use it as that, competitive advantage going in. And we've mentioned the Net Promoter Score already, and we've got some nice awards over there on the side that we have won for this. But yeah, no, you're fine.
Let's move on. That's awesome. I mean, the awards were remarkable across all areas of knowledge management, customer support, website, TSIA, ASP, all the industry associations. So those are definitely elements to be proud of. In terms of, you could share with us in terms of the scale and the technology stack that you use at Nutanix.
Yeah. So we've got. You guys can read the numbers here. We've grown a lot. So I've seen this grow over the past 6 years as well. So these numbers just keep going up, and the tech stack keeps getting larger and larger. But yeah, we've really scaled out. We are to the point. It's 24/7, 365. It has been for a long time, using the follow the sun model, and all the different pieces in the tech stack there. And there's plenty more teeny tiny ones that I wouldn't be able to remember even at this point, that serve all kinds of different roles. These are kind of the main ones, right? Our CRM is Salesforce. We've got SupportLogic as well, but then all, Slack and Outlook, but man, Slack, everybody knows about Slack these days. All these things create a collaborative culture, not just within support, but within the company as a whole. Being able to reach out to people directly and pull meetings together, pull people onto customer calls, open up tickets with engineering, and kind of create virtual war rooms and work through things. We're always looking for new ways to leverage the technologies that are out there to make the experience better for customers, but also to make the experience better for the engineers and other people that are working on these issues. The last thing that you want is somebody that has to jump through 20 hoops to fix a customer issue. When you do that, they're obviously going to be somewhat frustrated by the time they talk to the customer. That's not fair to the customer. So we're always looking for ways to make that experience better internally.
Very good. And perhaps you could double click into your approach to intelligent support. What were your early attempts in bringing AI to customer support, and how did you arrive at partnering with the support?
Yeah, yeah, AI, the shiny new science fiction. Everybody wants AI and everything. We tried to take this and leverage it toward things that needed automation within support. And the biggest thing for us was that seemed almost undoable, but would have saved a ton of effort was keyed in on escalations. So anybody, I mean, the term escalation can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different companies. The way that an escalation works at Nutanix is very simple for customers. We make it extremely easy for customers to escalate. If they log into our support portal and go to their case, there's a big button that says escalate. That's all it takes. You can also call in and ask to escalate it. But being able to go in and click that button makes it easy for people to escalate. The downside of that internally for us is we would get a lot of escalations, right? And fielding those and figuring out, what action we need to take, what we need to do was always tough. And what we realized over time was there were patterns that we could go in and inspect and say, a case, there are certain factors that will make a case escalate, right? If we don't talk to them for 2 weeks, it's probably going to escalate. If we tell them some bad news and don't say it in a way that showcases the fix that we're actually going to take, it can result in an escalation. So we were looking for ways to be able to kind of get a lead on that. And we started doing in-house development as well, but everything that we looked at was, it was pretty scoring based, as most AI is, where you're doing different clustered mapping and trying to figure out what threshold and what scores do we need to look at. But we realized that wasn't quite enough. There's a workflow that people go through. Thinking again of the support engineers' experience there, like we needed to think of the entire workflow that happens. And so we spoke with SupportLogic and noticed that they were able to track 100% of customer signals, where the in-house stuff was a lower percentage there, trying to determine sentiments, attention needed, things like that. The stuff that we mentioned that it's easy to pick up on in person, but virtually that can be really tough to do, especially just over emails. And so that, coupled with the fact that they were looking at the time to doing this escalation prediction, we got on board with them and partnered with SupportLogic. And it's been a great partnership so far. I think we'll show in a little bit kind of the results of what work we've done with them in terms of how it's impacted Nutanix directly. And then I'll go ahead and go out on a limb. Omid, you can correct me, but I think we've helped you guys as well by highlighting things that are working, some of the greater results, things to focus in, and then other things that we've even noticed that, like, hey, if you did this, I think it would make a bigger impact. And SupportLogic's been good about responding to those and kind of taking it to the next level to improve their own product, which helps us and helps all the rest of their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been really beyond a customer-vendor relationship, but a two-way partnership. As an intelligent support platform provider, we benefit from our customers and our users actually using a product, because as a result, our models constantly get better. We can improve it, and we can actually, based on their usage pattern, we also envision new functionality. And having Nutanix as our design partner has been incredibly beneficial to us. And a lot of times, even before we roll the feature, we actually run by Al and other folks at Nutanix and other customers in terms of making sure that we are on track in terms of meeting their business requirements. It is really, the focus here for us is to make sure that the support engineers, managers, escalation managers, they actually get their jobs done. And the question, what is their job? And then we want to actually know if with if they're okay with Al, we'd like to actually show the product, the demo, the product, and you can actually walk us through some of the workflows that you would ask your team members to follow.
Yeah, sure.
Very good. So with that, perhaps I should spend a few minutes just give an overview of SupportLogic. This is basically the entire stack that you see on top of the underlying ticketing systems or support products. We read everything that is in the ticketing system, all the interactions between customer and agents, including the internal interaction. We upload it to the cloud, and we use artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep neural networks, and natural language process technology to extract signals from unstructured data, to spot trends, predict events, and to coach users. And these are typically support professionals to drive intelligent workflows that improve customer experience and operational efficiency. Architecturally, SupportLogic is purposely built for enterprise technical support use cases and workflows. It integrates with your existing support CRM and engineering systems without any modification. And it's typically up and running within days without needing to involve IT. Now, in the context, as you can see here, we have 6 application modules from left to right. And in today's webinar, we're talking about intelligent escalation management, one of these 6 applications. And with intelligent escalation management, we provide prescriptive and actionable intelligence to inform support teams to resolve support challenges in a proactive way. Typically, we collect signals from, I think we have more than 60 different signal categories from support case interactions and use that as a basis to predict escalations. I would like to switch perhaps to our dashboard view. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and switch to our instance. And we have actually a demo instance here because obviously we cannot show real live data. Okay. Is everybody able to see my screen? SupportLogic user interface?
Yeah, you may want to increase the font size slightly.
Font size, okay. No, I took the whole screen. Okay, so what you see here on the left-hand side are the 6 application modules that I spoke about. If you're already a SupportLogic customer and you haven't seen this user interface, this is actually as part of our 2.0 release of the product that will be available this weekend. You may be familiar with the different UI, but we actually grouped all the functionality on the left-hand side for ease of use and better access to each of the modules. I'm going to bring up the intelligent escalation management dashboard. Here we have 5 different columns of cases, if you will. This is actually in real time being formed, and it's been updated. Obviously, this information comes from the underlying ticketing system. In the bottom left, you can see that the sync was about 15 minutes ago. You can have every 15 minutes or longer or less refresh. Typically, what you see here on the left-hand side is the cases that are likely to be escalated. These are the ones that, based on these factors, whether case activity, support response, sense of urgency, age, how long has it been? These are the factors that in aggregate would contribute the potential for account to be, for a case to be escalated. The typical actions that a support manager or escalation manager will take are either to acknowledge, to snooze, or to dismiss the case. And to find out about the accounts that are dismissed, for example, or the cases that have been dismissed, to revisit them, you can always pull them out. And also for the ones that are snoozed, with the time, how much time is left. At this point, we don't have any snoozed or dismissed. Then the second column is actually the cases that have been requested escalation. These are not actually escalated, but the customer has mentioned that they are going to escalate. Now, we all know in cases, typically there are pages of information, but this is really what, what depicts why we think that this account is about to be escalated by the customer. And this someone that actually, as an action, you can actually, if you think that the customer is going to escalate, you can actually move it to the escalated column. And as such, then the account would be, status would be changed, and the underlying to Salesforce plugin, the underlying system also would be updated. So this is not only the system of intelligence, but system of interaction, where you could actually take actions and the underlying ticketing system would be updated. We have two other columns here, what those have been escalated since the start of the day, those that are still active, and then the cases that have been resolved over the last 30 days. And obviously you can apply filters and you have your own custom view of the escalation. With that introduction, I want to actually ask Al, if you could walk us through some of the typical actions that you would like a support manager or escalation manager take when they bring up the application request. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have our support managers globally working on this, and primarily when they come here, they're going to go straight to that likely to be escalated section, right? And they'll, as Omid said, this lists the cases that are being predicted by the ML using the various factors there that an escalation may be happening. So what they would typically do is if they want to learn more about the case, which they pretty much always would, they would go ahead and click on it here, which just opens up the case so they can go in and inspect it. And there's a few things here that are really nice. If you look right up at the top, there's negative sentiment, and it highlights that for us here. It's surprising and disappointing to see that there's been virtually no communication to customers about this. It's really good to highlight. It's really good to know, but context is important as well. So if you click on it, it should shoot us right down to the comment itself. And so you can read, what they were talking about before and after and see what action we might need to take here. This is where things get a little murky for support managers. They have to make some decisions, right, based on the information that they're seeing here. If this is something that they're seeing, there's been no communication, then we probably need to give them some communication about this. Again, if we look up at the top, under the case history, you can see that it's highlighted in red. It's been open for 3 days. And the customer wait time has been 2 days and 13 hours. So that means the customer's been waiting on us for the majority of those 3 days and waiting on us to get back to them. So it makes sense, right? If they're seeing a lack of communication about issues and lack of communication in general, that here's a case where they've been sitting for a little bit waiting to hear from us. So the actions that we would take at this point would be to probably acknowledge. You could acknowledge it. You could snooze it if you want to, have this come back up to you later. I wouldn't dismiss this. A dismissal would be saying that this was incorrectly predicted, but we could acknowledge it and put in a comment here about what we're going to do. So the acknowledgement could say, that support engineer will reach out to the customer to see if they can help them out. And then, of course, they need to go and talk to that support engineer as well to let them know, since we have support managers doing it at this time. And there's different ways that they can do that. Obviously, with the work from home culture right now, it's not as easy as it used to be, where they could just walk over to their desk. So what is really nice is being able to share the case itself. So if you open the case back up, there's actually a share button on the case itself, where you can say, okay, I want to share this via email, and it'll send them a link to the SupportLogic instance. You could do it via Slack as well if you have the Slack plugin, which we do, and just say, hey, saw this one was going to be escalated or might be escalated. Can you reach out to them? And then you get a response from them, and at that point, it's kind of a typical workflow for a support manager. One of the things that that we're wanting to do with this at Nutanix is, if you notice a lot of this, it's the support manager doing the triage here. They're having to figure out what's going on with the case and then let the person know who's actually running the case and owning it on the support side to take some action. Our next steps that we're not doing yet, but we're moving toward, are actually driving that action instead of having the support managers do it, enabling the support engineers themselves to do this. since at that point it speeds things up. The support engineers already know the context far better. They know what's going on with the case. And so if they're able to intelligently go in here and see the predictions and understand the sentiment that's surrounding their customer and their case, then they'll be able to make more intelligent decisions and make them faster without having to rely on somebody to poke them and tell them to go and do this. So that's our next step, which I think we're looking forward to trying to make that transition. But for now, it's the support managers. They do an excellent job. Again, when we go back to the presentation, we can look at some results of how it's turned out. But that's the general workflow for using the escalation management on our part.
Great, thank you so much. So we actually just scraped the surface. We didn't speak, for example, about the sentiment score and attention score, two underlying components that with the values, that are constantly refreshed in terms of where the customer is in terms of sentiment, different sentiment factors that we talked about, as well as the need for urgency or prompt attention. Anything else that we can cover? Obviously, the purpose here is not to give you a comprehensive demo. You can reach out to us and we'd be happy to demo you both the platform, various applications. The idea here was that actually to show you how the escalation management is being used as a one pane of glass, if you will, that is giving you all the insights that are coming from all different sources. And it's also a system of engagement that you could actually engage with it, not spend a ton of amount of time, because it actually helps you to sort and prioritize. You can also do it based on the case age, late response, rank, however you would like to, sort the cases that need attention. Spend a few minutes, get your job done, go to the next meeting, come back again and see how things are progressing. This is a really new way of implementing a workflow, intelligent workflow. And I like many of you come from a background where the workflow was the underlying, and I had always an inbox that I had to move things from the inbox to the next box, if you will. Here, you pay attention to what's most important. And before this tool, I do recall in my previous companies, we actually had the spreadsheets. We had a ton of different places, and we have to do a swivel chair between different systems to get information like what is the result of the analytics and AI with what is actually happening in real time with the systems of engagement like Slack, in the future Teams and email, as well as have a great perspective of historical data. Now to get here, we actually worked with Nutanix. They provided us several years of case history that helps us actually build these models. And with the feedback that they provide us, these models actually can become constantly better. So I'm going to switch back. And while I'm doing that, maybe there are some questions that we can answer. We'd like to continue with the presentation. There's a question here that's been asked. Just a moment. Okay, actually, Al, you've been answering the question. This is great. Maybe the question was that, can the likelihood to be escalated be sorted by the support engineer manager?
Yeah. So you'll see there's filters up at the top. There's some kind of common ones there on the top left, but over on the top right, you see the little headset icon for the actual support engineers and the customers themselves. And then there's also the filter button itself. We use this quite a bit. If you are based in a certain office and you want to just look at customers for a certain region, or cases owned by support engineers for a certain region, or even just ones that, support engineers that roll up to a certain manager like yourself, you could do that through the filtering, which we do that quite a bit. So we have all our support managers, we've got like 50, well, more than 50 now. We've got 65 to 70 of them globally. They're not all doing this at one time, but they're kind of tasked with daily taking a look at these for their teams. So they'll go in and look primarily at the ones for their support engineers, because they can go and talk to them very directly about it. And then we have duty managers as well that kind of do it on a global basis or a regional basis to make sure nothing falls through the cracks. But yeah, you can use that filter to go in and look at what that looks like individually, or filter it down to smaller groups so you're not looking at all of it at once.
Okay, very good. Perhaps you can explain a little more about how you actually not only do the prediction, but also collaboration with other folks in the company, with customer contacts to resolve escalations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So like the primary action that comes out of an escalation is some form of collaboration, right? It's almost always some communication, whether it's reaching out to the customer or engaging engineering or the account team, what have you. So it's incredibly important for us to be able to do that. It's important for our support managers to know who to reach out to and bring in these different groups. This kind of goes back to the culture that I mentioned earlier, where support is like a key part of a lot of different organizations, especially, I mentioned sales earlier. Like, we have a great relationship with our account teams. Engineering's the same way. So the collaboration piece really is the biggest piece here. That's where we take the majority of the actions. And yeah, this illustrates nicely that support really is tied to just about everything. And it's a two-way street, right? So we've talked about cases and collaborating. If you run into a customer issue and we need to escalate to engineering or find out information from them, or maybe the operations team can help out if it's more like SaaS-oriented, we reach out to the sales teams. There's times where plenty of times I've had to reach out to marketing because there's information that may be contradictory or they have information for us. That direction is pretty obvious, I think. Especially the engineering to support line there is really important. One thing that I think is really cool that Nutanix does that I haven't seen quite to this level at other companies I've been with is the other direction, which is how support is supplying information rather than just asking it to these different groups. And myself in my role, I get a lot of these requests myself through the operational improvements. But we get asked for a lot of information about what patterns we're seeing, what do we think is important, whether it be like key issues that we're seeing in the field that we report to engineering to work on fixing, other things like that. But especially with like new products and new features, support is right at the center of the creation of those. So when a new product or feature is coming out, we're tied in directly to do early testing with them and bringing the unique customer perspective with us and trying to help make things more usable. It's actually part of the support readiness team that I fall under, is to make the products themselves ready to be supportable and ready to be used by customers, by our own internal people. It's very easy to have a button that a developer puts on a page, and we say what happens if they do or there's a field, what happens if they put 0 in there? And the developer may say, well, they wouldn't put 0 in there, and we're like, oh, no, you haven't worked with a customer. They'll put 0 in there. What happens when they do that? So bringing that kind of perspective to them, and then thinking about the workflows that customers go through when they're doing their work, because not only do we do the work, but we see it, right? We get on live instances through WebEx and Zoom and others, and see the workflows themselves, and we can see and hear the frustrations that customers deal with, where they have to click something 20 times or something loads slowly, or why does it look like that? That doesn't make any sense. I use it like this. And being able to provide that feedback is extremely valuable. And what's nice is all these other groups see the value in that.
Very good point. Thank you so much. Maybe perhaps we talked about collaboration. Back to the escalation, how does your SRE, serviceability engineers, use insights from SupportLogic?
Yeah, so all this information that I talked about is, there's anecdotal stuff, right? I was on the phone with a customer and they were frustrated with X. But what's far more powerful is whenever we're able to pull together actual data. In the past, that's been difficult to do, right? You have to do a lot of work with data analytics to kind of dig in and find the right stuff. SupportLogic makes it really easy, and that's actually proved to be extremely valuable. So that top section there about empowering the SREs, a lot of that has to do with what I mentioned before of getting SREs more plugged into the actual escalation management and prediction piece. so that they can help train the ML engine. We can work on faster resolution. But that bottom section there with the serviceability engineers, those are the people I was speaking about that help drive those new features and new products to make sure that they're supportable out of the gate. So the trends and data that we're able to pull from SupportLogic make it extremely easy to help back up our claims when we say that something needs to be fixed because we're seeing problems. When you put data behind it, that becomes so much more powerful to be able to pull together very easily all the negative sentiment that's related to product X. That makes a big difference. And you can add code versions and all kinds of different filters and stuff in there to help pull it through. We've been able to do that before. It's not like that data wasn't there, but trust me, because I've done it myself, it's like pulling teeth. It's very difficult to go through, and it's very time-consuming. SupportLogic makes it really, really easy to not only pull it up, but change it on the fly. So if you present the data and they say, well, what about this? Well, you can just change the filter real quick and see what that looks like. So we can see that in terms of improving the product itself. It just gives us a stronger foundation to stand on when it comes to advocating for the customer.
Very good. Perhaps you could speak to some of the results as you transition from reactive to proactive case resolution.
Yeah. So the graph over there on the right is what we use internally when we talk about kind of the success and progress of our partnership with SupportLogic, specifically around the escalation prediction. And what this looks at is how many cases we have open, how many cases we had escalated, and then the yellow line there is what the percentage of escalated versus total case count looks like. Where you can see in April of 2019, where there's kind of that hexagon there, that's when we started using SupportLogic for escalation prediction. And you can see the percentage of cases escalated just completely dipped down. For a long time, we sat kind of up there close to the 10% mark. I mentioned earlier, we make it very easy for customers to escalate. So we weren't surprised to see a higher number, but we found that we were spending a lot of time on it, which may be something that we want to do. It's not a bad idea to spend time on escalated cases. But the problem was that by the time it gets escalated, it's kind of too late, right? I'll draw back to the Apple comparison earlier. When you're repairing that relationship with the customer, the problem has already happened. So if a customer says, escalates and says, hey, things are going terrible, I need help, we go all hands on deck and, we swarm it, we have engineering on, we have the account team involved. It may end up actually with a really positive experience for the customer. And in a lot of those situations, we would see the customer satisfaction scores on our surveys be extremely high, which you might expect because we're giving them excellent support at that point. But the NPS on those cases is typically a little bit lower because they had to ask for that help. And by the time they had to raise their hand and say, help me, things are going wrong, we fixed it, but they still had to ask. And that's really the whole reason that we started doing this, is we wanted to fix that relationship before the relationship was fully broken. And we've noticed a huge, as you can see on the graph, a huge dip in the percentage of cases that are escalated. But it's translated into a lot of different things. It's been a huge success internally here.
Great. And in terms of the ROI for escalation prediction and prevention, you mentioned about the impact on customer CSAT and NPS, but it's broader, correct? It's not just the customer, but also impacts support engineers' performance, their job satisfaction, support operations, how you run as an operations function into the quality, backlog, resolution time, as well as how the company itself has been impacted or will be impacted. Anything you'd like to say as we think of going to prediction and prevention, what would be the return on investment?
I mean, it's all of these things, right? It spans, like you said, it spans far more than just a customer to engineer engagement. Like that's really where it starts, but there's a ripple effect that comes out from it. There's customer retention and job satisfaction on the support engineer side because there's less frustration in these sorts of situations because we head it off. We try and get ahead of all of this. I mentioned already about the CSAT and NPS. That through doing this, our CSAT remained constant, which was really our goal because like a problem that we have. It's a good problem to have. Our CSAT's very high, so it's hard to set goals to improve the CSAT. So we wanted to make sure that we maintain that, and we do. And one of the biggest things that's really difficult to measure is that customer effort there. But that's kind of what I was referencing with the customer having to ask for help, and then things get really good. I mean, I'm glad things went good, but they still had to ask for help. This takes that away, right? This reduces the effort on the customer, which improves their overall experience. But going beyond that customer side, I mean, we see resolution times go down. The support engineers themselves see less time that they're working on these individual cases because they're not sitting there, they're not having to engage the account teams as often. Which, while it's a positive experience overall, it's more work involved. You've got to keep more people updated. There's a lot more moving pieces at that point. So if we can get ahead of that and like truly resolve the issue before it gets to that point, it's less work time for them. And as a former support engineer, that's a better overall experience for them as well. So yeah, the things that are listed here or on the slide that we were on, they're all impacted, and there's probably some here that we didn't even think about in going through it. But yeah.
Very good, thank you. That's really it speaks to how impactful it can be when you move from reactive to proactive and use prediction and prevention and techniques and technology. In terms of the overall, I mean, this is something that also Deepak Chawla, your VP of Worldwide Support, highlighted in terms of the overall business outcome that you've achieved with SupportLogic while maintaining a high level of customer satisfaction and loyalty. We talked about up to 40% reduction in escalation. Perhaps one stat that we did not talk about, what was mentioned by Deepak as well, was the faster resolution time across the board by 30%. That's incredible. What could you tell us about? Anything more you could tell us about your resolution time?
I mean, I mean, it's really everything that we've talked about. If you're able to, I mean, support engineers want to focus on the issue itself, right? They want to fix the problem and not have to deal with a lot of the surrounding feelings as much as they can. And by getting ahead of it like this, we're giving them the all clear to do that. So if we're able to figure out before things get truly bad that they just need to talk to them a little more or something along those lines, it makes it so much easier. And not just easier, but you really see it, and where we can really measure it is in that resolution time. So we see cases get resolved faster, and that drives so much of customer satisfaction and NPS. When you have a quick support issue that's fully resolved, that's about as good as it gets. And yeah, the reduction in escalations is great, but that's on us. We could have 100% cases escalated, and maybe customers are fine with that. The escalation really impacts us internally. The resolution time is what affects both our engineers, but really impacts the customers. That helps drive that CSAT and NPS that are listed down there.
Great, thank you so much. So are there any questions to ask Al? I know there were a few questions that came about SupportLogic platform, how we do the predictive modeling, some capability of the product. We'd love to have that actually separately addressed. So we reach out to you and answer questions that you have about the product, but we want to make sure that we take maximum benefit from Al's presence here. And if there are questions, perhaps you can raise your hand. I can unmute you to ask questions, or enter in chat and I'll read out loud.
So I saw somebody post about the case assignment. So we're not using the case assignment functionality at Nutanix yet. We've talked about it, but we haven't started using that yet. We do some different like intelligent case routing internally. We haven't fully transitioned to using the case assignment that SupportLogic has yet, though we have demoed it.
Mm-hmm. There was a question about, is it possible to have one escalation dashboard across SFDC and Jira data? Yes, it is possible. I would love to work with customers who are interested in that use case, and definitely reach out to us if that is something of interest to you. So thank you so much. We are at the end of our presentation. I want to thank Al. I want to thank our audience for engaging with us. To learn more about SupportLogic, our email address is there. Reach out to our website to request a demo. Contact our sales teams at sales@supportlogic.io. We'd love to have continued conversation with you. If you are a SupportLogic customer and would like to share your story, we'll be happy to set up future webinars where we can actually share your experiences with intelligent support with other support practitioners and leaders. Thank you so much. We have come to the conclusion of today's webinar. We look forward to seeing everyone at a future webinar. Take care, everyone.
Thanks,
Goodbye.